Welcome to the AJ and RJ show. I'm AJ Motts.
And I am still RJ Stone.
And today is a second episode of Metal Digest. And today we're going to be looking at a fan favorite band.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. And I hate using the term underrated because it's not appropriate here. Absolutely not. I'm going to say most, probably underappreciated almost, just because of the history that this band has had and the influence that they've had on the industry. It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Armored Saint.
One and only LA band, Armored Saint.
Yeah, started by Phil Sandoval, Gonzo Sandoval, brothers, great guys. Then they brought in some other people.
Dave Pritchard, Joey Vera,
and John Bush, but we don't know the order of who came before, what the exact order of the band's lineage is.
It's contentions like, oh no, he came in first. No, they brought in him. Yeah. No, they went to school together. No, it's like so.
No, I started the band.
Oh, was you? All right. Well, it happens. Stranger things have happened. It was LA, and it was the 80s. So the band formed right around 82, but to clear up this confusion, if there's only a way that we could figure out to bring in an expert on this.
Yeah, if we only knew somebody who was there at the time.
Wonder what happens if I snap my fingers.
Well, what really happened, guys, was me, John Bush, decided to transfer high schools in my junior year. When I did that, I went from the neighborhood high school that me and a bunch of my friends grew up, which was in a town called El Sereno here in lovely Los Angeles, California. And when I did that, I transferred to South Pasadena High School. And that's where I was introduced to Dave Pritchard. And there's a lot of little intricacies that happened, but at the bottom line of it was that meeting Dave was eventually how Armored Saint kind of got together. Gonzo and Phil kind of inspired getting together and playing with Dave in a garage at their house and at Dave's house. And eventually I came back around in to sing because I had a PA system, but meeting Dave was kind of like the pivotal aspect of Armored Saint, because the rest of us were all from this one neighborhood. And then once that happened, once I transferred schools and we met Dave, then these two worlds kind of merged, which was really cool because South Pasadena was kind of this middle class, affluent neighborhood, primarily white people at the time. And El Sereno was this kind of lower middle income neighborhood that was primarily Latino. And so these two worlds kind of started to blend. And not only Dave and Armored Saint and Gonzo and Phil and me, but a bunch of other people came in afterwards and blended, and other bands formed and other relationships developed. As a matter of fact, one of my best friends married a girl from that neighborhood. So that none of that probably would have really happened unless the transformation to go to another school happened. And it was me and a guy named Zeno Franco, who doesn't get any credit, poor Zeno, but him and I were the ones that made the big jump to transfer schools, and that's where we met Dave. And that's kind of an important aspect of the band right there.
Well, awesome. Thanks for clearing that up, Mr. John Bush. Welcome to the podcast. How you been?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good. We're good. Living the life out here. And say that again?
How's Big D?
It's a unique place, to say the least. The music out here is a little different than what we're accustomed to, the whole musical lifestyle. But it's good. It's a great place to raise a family, which I'm doing, or in his case, go out and meet women. So it's all good.
That's great. I'm a big basketball fan, and I like Luka Doncic is pretty awesome. So that's cool.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's crazy good, huh?
Yeah.
The Stars didn't make the playoffs in the NHL, so I'm sorry. Nor did the Kings, though. So.
Now you're cutting deep. Really? So early in the interview, you're cutting deep? Well, look, thanks for joining us. We really do appreciate having you on here. It has been a while, obviously, since we've seen you, had a chance to talk to you. Got to give props to Tori, your wife, for putting this together, helping us get this taken care of. So let's have some fun, if you don't mind. We want to just hear everything that's going on. You guys have had quite an exciting year, even with COVID and everything, happy to say. I want to hear a little bit about that. But also want to maybe dive a little bit deeper into the history of the band. You guys have been around since, so going on what you said, was that around 80, 81-ish?
Well, really, I think some of the rehearsals with like Gonzo, Phil, David, myself happened at the end of '81. But I always kind of think of like I mean, we did gigs before Joey came in the band. We did it, probably about 10 shows, Gazzari's being one of them, which is a famous club that's no longer in existence here in Hollywood. And we played a couple of high schools, our old high school and this Catholic girls high school, which I never know how that we ended up making that happen. But in any case, I don't think of really the band. I mean, we had shows, like I said, but when Joey joined, I think that was really the complete, completion of the band, if you will. And that was in like May of 1982. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw you guys was right around 83, 84 when my folks started letting me go see shows. Yeah, and I can't remember if it was Jezebel's or if it was Joshua's at the time in Westminster. I can't remember which show it was, but it was at one of those places, I know for a fact. But
it was the Woodstock.
That was in Anaheim. Yeah, it could have been Woodstock.
Radio City or Woodstock, which were right next to one another there in Anaheim, and or I think they were in Anaheim.
Not in Ball.
I feel like Jezebel's came a little later, maybe late '80s, but I don't know. But yeah, Orange County was always an important territory for Armored Saint, and we always did really well there. And we played Billy Barty's, which is like an infamous Armored Saint show, which was in Fullerton, which was a
skating rink.
And Billy Barty, he ran it. It was his place, and he was a famous little person, and he was there, and that was in Orange County. So, and that in fact, there's footage of that show that it lives on forever on the internet, because we did a whole concert. They filmed it. It's a great show.
Yeah, I just watched that in prep for this interview. It's out there. It's on YouTube. So I just watched it.
Yeah, it's a good. It was part of like we had some footage that on like one of our first DVDs that we had. So yeah, we're always, like I said, feel a closeness with Orange County and have some great shows there.
When you go back to those days, and I remember, obviously the band was coming up, and then you guys go out and you released a video for Can You Deliver, right? And I remember seeing that on that local video channel in LA, Video 22, with Steve March. And you guys, I know, you guys were in heavy rotation. So I'd come home, I'd run home from school every afternoon to catch that video. And looking back, and like you said, AJ said, we were doing research, and it was great to revisit all of these tunes. And I watched the video, it's like, he puts a note in here, it's like, man, do you think that thing still holds up to today's standards? And I said, I don't know, let's ask him.
Especially the beginning special effects.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time it seemed pretty high tech, Now in retrospect is just kind of, it looks a little pretty funny and retro, but it was great. I think it was probably considered to be a fairly expensive video in 1984. It was probably like around 40 grand to make that. And it was a lot of fun to do it. We went out and I think it was Topanga Canyon, and we filmed some of that other footage with the car and the bike. And I think Dave actually, the bike never even started, but he rode down that hill, and I think he fell over because he probably couldn't ride a bike so well, and motorcycle, that is. But it was great. It was fun to do that. And then we filmed the footage of us performing with a bunch of fans, and it was a great video. It's still to this day. It's it has a campy element to it, but we were campy at that point as far as the look, without a doubt. And but the song is great, and it's a classic Saint song to this day. So,
how do you explain that video to your kids?
How do I explain what?
How do you explain that video to your kids? Hey, here's Dad, 50 years ago.
They just laugh about, my hair, and, I mean, we were young, man. I think when that was made, it was like, I was probably, because March of the Saint came out in, I think, September of 1984. So I just turned 21. So by the time we made the record and filmed that video, I was probably still 20 years old. Most of us were. Dave was even younger than me. And Joey and Gonzo were literally months apart. Phil's a little older, but I don't know. It's just a trip. I just, I look back and I think God's the guy so young, but luckily for us, that's why we're still here doing it. Because even though we're older, we're not too old, and we can still pull off Can You Deliver, and all these songs live, and that's feels pretty good.
Yeah, and so going back to that album, you were on, I think for that one, Chrysalis Records, and they put a lot of money into that album, especially being a first-time band on a label. Do you know how much they spent on that album and you guys, just to kick you guys off and get going?
Well, we spent too much, that's for sure. And that was one of the errors that we made and early on in our career that kind of haunted us for a while, because we really spent like probably in the neighborhood of about 350 grand to make that album. And that was a lot, even though people had big budgets then in the 80s, it was probably too much money for a brand new band to be spending, in my opinion, in retrospect. And we could have probably done the same thing without doing it. But we were in a big studio. We were in the studio called Ocean Way, which was right on Sunset in Hollywood. And, we always laughed at the other people in the studio at the time was Barbara Streisand and Supertramp. And it was like, what are we doing in here? Like, this is expensive, right? But it's cool. It's amazing. Look at this place. So, it wasn't until obviously probably a long time after where we really probably discovered how much we were spending. And, we were just young kids, pretty much oblivious to the realities of it. We kind of had a hunch, but, I'm not blaming anyone. I mean, it was our responsibility to know what was happening too. But, in retrospect, it was just too much money. And, it always put us in debt, because then we were always trying to get out of debt, kind of like a lot of Americans that, with credit cards, right? So just trying to always constantly get out of debt. With the next album, Delirious Snowman, we cut the budget in half, which is great. And then the next album, Raising Fear, we cut it even more in half and was great. But by that time, we were just already far in debt. Now, the beauty of the story is that just recently, we were able to negotiate a deal with, well, it's not even Chrysalis anymore because it's EMI, I think, who bought them out. And, Chrysalis, I hear Chrysalis is coming back, but in any case, we worked out a deal where they were actually nice enough to waive the debt that we had, and it was pretty substantial. So now we're actually, from now on, getting like official royalties from those records. We get publishing money, and we always have for a while now, but the royalties from the record, we actually saw some, and it was, even if it's, I always say every amount of royalty is just principal. I don't care if it's $10 or if it's $1,000 or 10 grand, it doesn't matter. It's just principal. And because, that's your goal is to get royalties. That's, you don't want to just make records. It's great to make records and go on tour, but if you're in debt all the time, it
doesn't become very fun at that point either.
Well, it's fun. Every part of what we've done is fun. Playing shows, recording records. It's always, for the most part, we have fun. But you would like to see some monetary substance behind it as well, and because we're all looking to earn a living. Let's face it, and it's hard in the music business. It's a real. I always say it's like a feast or famine in this business. It's a lot of people who made a ton of money at this, well, not a lot of people, actually a small percentage of people. And then you have a lot of people who are just kind of like, kind of make a lot lower money and try to have a standard of living that they can do it, continue to do it in. And that's the majority of people. And then there's people that not even ever got to that point. So, I was always joke, you'd go to the Chrysalis, or even later when I was in Anthrax, to the bins, where they had all the other CDs, and they're like, you want to take some CDs, and you're like, cool. So you open them up, and you're like, who are these people? You don't even hear. So it just shows that 70% of the bands who make records and artists, to the point where I'm pretty aware of a lot of groups, but we would be like, who are these bands? I never even heard of these bands, so. Which is sad. Completely
unrelated, but related, just because of the format, the type of music. But that's how I found Tori Amos. Tori Amos? That's exactly how I found Tori Amos. This is back at the FM days in Long Beach, because they used to get bins and bins of artists they never play. So, we, as PAs, we were allowed to go and grab whatever you want. And then I'm like, oh, who's this? And it was a CD on WEA, on Warner Brothers, or Atlantic, I guess. Why Can't Tori Read? I'm like, oh, cute cover? Why not? Take it home. She's cute. Listen to it. It's like, what the? is this? And now look at her, right? So totally get it. Totally get it.
Well, don't get me wrong. A lot of those records I went on to really like, and I would talk about this one particular record when I was in Anthrax of a group. Somebody sent me these records from another label, but it was this band called Lockup, which was the band that originally Tom Morello was in before Rage Against the Machine. And I never heard of this band. It was somebody, one of the guys sent it to me from the label. And I was like, wow, this band's really cool. And they had some great songs, and the guitar playing is awesome. And eventually I never heard anything much more about them. And then the next thing you know, this Rage Against the Machine band is huge and really cool. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the same guy. It was like, so, it just goes to show there's a lot of talented stuff out there that doesn't get to see the light of day. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody from, like when we were in Chrysalis, like there was Billy Idol and Spandau Ballet and Pat Benatar and Huey Lewis and really successful groups at the time. Of course, Jethro Tull, but they probably, some of those people might have did the same thing. Armored Saint, who's this? I mean, heard of this band? And maybe they put it on and went, hey, it's pretty good.
And it would be
Hey, Pat Benatar was a classic Saint fan, that we never knew because she got a CD at the label one time. I'm plugging my computer in. Bear with me one second here.
You're right ahead.
I'm at 6%.
Well, please, we don't want you to die in the middle of the interview. I'd be remiss if I didn't say I never bought an album just based on the album artwork. I'd be lying if I told you I didn't. So I'm sure you got a few sales out. It's like, oh, this is freaking cool. I need this.
Yeah. I mean, come on, Iron Maiden's first album probably sold millions just for that reason alone, for sure.
Exactly. So you talked about your publishing before, and you talked about the royalties and stuff. So as AJ had mentioned, in prep for this, went back and I listened to everything. And I'm not going to lie, I listened to it all online, right? Because that's where it is, and I have music accounts. So you should be getting some royalties because I've listened to every single album at least 3 times in the past week. No, absolutely. And I'm going in a couple places with this. With the digital world, how has that affected the band? Are you guys seeing what they're saying they're paying people? Oh, we're not really getting the lifts, but you're getting 13 cents for 1 million plays or something along those lines. And B, it proved that your voice has really, John, and it's a compliment, and I'm not sitting there trying to grease you up or anything, but your voice has stood the test of time. I listened from day one, from album one, up until Punching the Sky. It's like you're the strength behind your voice, the tonality of your voice, it really has not changed. Yeah, you're a little bit, maybe slightly deeper, your pitch is a little bit deeper, but it's still just as strong, and that's what I thought was fantastic. So, the royalty question.
So, the royalty question.
Well, in regards to royalties, I'd say that I think things are actually improving. They are getting better, and there's obviously things are very different because record sales aren't happening the way they used to happen, and a lot of people are streaming. But you have to still pay the artists. They can't just be. There's got to be a way to do that, and I do think things are improving, and I feel like they're going to get better and be very pro artists, and that'll be great. We're embracing that. So I mean, I still love getting vinyl and buying CDs, and I want to contribute to the business I'm in. So I think it's important for me to buy records. Otherwise, how do I convince the public to buy records? That's right there you go. And nothing beats, to me, LPs are still the best. They just look the best and aesthetically to hold, and and they actually, if you have the right sound system, I think they still sound the best. But but whatever, however people do it, whether they do it online, as far as downloading stuff, as long as people are listening, I think that's really the key. Obviously, that's what you want. So, as far as my voice goes, it's funny because I do think, people have been complimentary about saying that my voice hasn't changed, and I'm really complimented, like I said, by that. But I really think my voice has changed a lot, but not for the worse. When you listen to the early records, I just sounded young, and I sounded like probably somebody who hadn't really kind of discovered his craft yet. But as time has gone on, I think as my voice has gotten a little deeper, but it's more in a warmer register, and still sounds powerful and maybe stronger than ever. Knock on wood, but it's there, and it's like you said, the tone is pretty right where I want it to be. I've had to make adjustments singing some of those early stuff live, but I think it sounds better now because it just sounds in the right tone of where my voice is. So sometimes I struggle with actually really low register stuff. That's an area that's, I think, more challenging than even sometimes singing higher, strangely enough. But, luckily I'm still belting it out and I practice hard. And, I've been singing too. I don't want to try to repeat other things I've said in interviews. I think it's important to try to say different things. But one of the things I have said recently is that over this course of time that, where we haven't been able to perform, I want to keep my voice in shape. So I'm just I don't want to keep singing the Armored Saint songs because I'll burn out on them and I don't want to do that. So I'm kind of just going through my catalog of bands, and I kind of started at A with like Aerosmith, and now I'm at Q. I did some Queen the other day, and I did some Queens of the Stone Age the other day, and yesterday I was singing to some Queensryche, and let's face it, that stuff. Chuck Tate's voice was pretty out of my range, but incredible singer, of course, and Todd belts that stuff out incredibly well now himself, and but it was good. It was challenging for me to do that. I'm a little raspy today trying to sing like songs from Mindcrime and stuff, but that's what I want to do. Is like, that's a way to keep my voice in shape, kind of emulate some people that I really admire, and kind of go through my catalog. So I don't know what's next. Maybe I'll start singing some Rainbow songs, because I think I've exhausted the cues.
Yeah, not a whole lot of Q bands.
That'll be hard because it'll be some Dio and maybe the Graham Bonnet record, and so that's what I'm doing now to keep the voice in shape, because it is a muscle like anything else, and you just got to keep working it. And that's because if I go like 6 months without singing, I'll atrophy, and it's like, now let's pull out Rain of Fire. If I forget it,
Right there.
Exactly. That's what it'll be like. That's what it'll sound like.
I've been holding that in
That's what
since
it'll
the
sound like right there.
There you go.
All right.
Can I get one of these?
Right?
In a moment, yeah.
We can do that. Yeah. So we'd have to talk about kind of a bad time in the band. We had a terrible tragedy happen. Other bands have had this happen as well, where you lose a band member. What was going on in the band when you discovered Dave had leukemia, and what was the band support like for him? And take us through that time.
Well, it was a jaw dropper of an announcement that he made when he told us, and we knew leukemia was pretty serious disease then, and I think we kind of toiled between like slightly being in denial and then being very concerned about his future as a human being, not just the band, of course, but mainly his own life. And yet the guy just kind of, trudged on, and he was like, let's just keep writing songs and do what we do. And, God love him. There would be times we'd be hanging out and drinking, and he could pound, and it'd be like, should you be drinking?
Is that the best course of action right now?
He wanted to live his life. He wanted to, he just had a zest for life. And that's the thing about Dave. He always did. And up to the end. And so, he had that flaming crazy red hair, and he was somebody who just, he was a great artist, and just a creative guy, and, loved to party, and was probably, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best guitar players that I've ever heard in rock, and, really underrated. He was super soulful, but yet real Euro influenced, and wrote great riffs, and just had a really unique style, which I think is really the most important thing as any rock musician or singer. It's just about being you, about having your own thing. I don't care if somebody can rip the 1,000,000 miles an hour. If they don't have their own trip, then I think it's just halfway. I'd rather have somebody. Look at David Gilmour, is like one of the greatest guitar players ever, and sometimes he'll just hold one note, and it's like more, and it's just, it just touches your soul. So I don't think it's about technique is important, but I think it has to be combined with style, and Dave had that. So, I think we just kept going on, and we had this kind of time of limbo because we were dropped, and we weren't ready to make Symbol yet, and but we're writing those songs, and we were rehearsing in this old studio, and we would just go there and kind of be in our own world, and we just kind of kept living, and that's what Dave suggested. But underneath it all, I think there was this kind of uncertainty that in the long run, I think kind of led to some amazing songwriting, because it was that feeling of just not knowing what the future had, but still kind of controlling what we could. So.
And his work still does appear on Symbol of Salvation. Some of his work is still on there, correct?
Well, the songs, a lot of them were written by Dave on that album, and Joey, we had this awesome idea, and Joey did, I think, too, because he played a lot of those demos of those songs, because we did them on 4 tracks back then, set 4 tracks, which, we always made these really cool sounding demos, but they were old sounding in a way, but and he played on a lot of those original demos that eventually we released Symbol of Salvation with a second CD, with Brian Slagle, us doing an interview, and then the demos of those with Dave, which was really cool. But he played on a lot of those songs, and what we did is we lifted the one lead from the song Tainted Past, which was a great song. It was one of the last songs we wrote for that with Dave, and it just has this really cool, epic, slow lead, and we lifted it from the 4 track. So this is pre-Pro Tools, where everything was on tape, so we had to fly it in, and the tempo was different. So it was like a real arduous process. It probably took about 5-6 hours, probably most of the day of that day in the studio. But him and the engineer at the time, Brian Karlstrom, who unfortunately died a few years ago too, which is really sad. They did it. They just took the time to lift that lead and put it in the modern version of the recording of it. And so Dave's in there as not only as a writer, of course, but as an actual player on that album, which is really cool.
Which is a great honor to him and to his legacy. And do you still in touch with his family at all?
I think his mom and his dad is still alive. His mom passed away just like maybe a year or 2 back. I haven't seen his younger brother Kenny in years, and Kenny was a great kind of eccentric guy who was a bass player himself and talented. I haven't seen him in years. I know his youngest brother Rob got a family, and they live in like Sacramento area, and I think that's where the dad lives. And we sent them some royalty checks lately, but I think Joey had a communication a little bit with Rob, his youngest brother, because we had to get some legal stuff together to send him information and royalties, like I said. But I think Dave's a trip. His spirit is kind of always there with us, no matter what. And when Joey, sometimes will write something, or maybe Jeff or Phil will play a lead, it'll sound like Dave. It'll be weird. I don't know if they're intentionally trying to do that, or if it's just kind of naturally coming out, but it's pretty awesome. Sometimes you'll hear that and go, that sounded like Dave. That's really weird. It's like he's still channeling in there somehow. And it's, he was always a ball buster. And so I'm sure he's busting our balls nonstop still. And, it's great. He's there. His presence is there.
Okay, so the band has decided to continue on. So how do you find, Phil is now back in the band after leaving, and you bring in Jeff Duncan. How'd you find Jeff?
Well, I mean, there's a little bit more to the timeline there. When we decided to get a second guitar player again, because we were a 4-piece when Phil left for a couple of albums, and it just probably wasn't correct for the band. We were always a 2-guitar sounding band, and at the time we were content with just being the 4 of us. So, but we eventually knew that we needed 2 guitar players. It just sounded better live. And so then we wanted to have Jeff even back in the band back when Phil left. And then he was doing his own band, Odin. He didn't want to leave, and they were doing well. We understood that. We were bummed, but we understood. So, that's when we carried on, like I said, as a 4-piece. We auditioned other people, but it just, nothing felt right. But then we always said, no, let's get, maybe Jeff's interested now. Years have passed, a couple of years have passed. So then Jeff actually did come back and come into the band around June of 1988 or that was our first show. We played the Country Club in Reseda, which was a great venue. And we played 2 nights. It's kind of funny because Fates Warning actually opened both shows, which, again, there's a parallel with Joey. Joey wasn't in the band then. It was just Insane. But, and then we played the shows, first 2 shows with Jeff, and they were awesome. And then we carried on as that band for a while. So, and then Jeff was part of some of the writing and some of those demos that we did with Dave. So Jeff played with Dave, and then, and then Jeff kind of had his own, he had some things that he wanted to solve on his own, some circumstances. So he kind of left the band again. And then we were back to like being a 4-piece with Dave, but we knew Dave was sick. And so we needed to get somebody for a small period of time. That a guy named Alan Barlam played in Armored Saint. He doesn't get any credit, poor Alan, but he was in the band, did a couple gigs. He was involved in a little bit of the writing process, mostly songs that didn't really kind of see the light of day. He was in a band called Hellion.
I remember Hellion, yeah, with Ann Bowen, right?
But I'm giving Alan a little props here because he never really gets it with So Say Was Sane. But he just was in a time in the band where we were just like it wasn't right. Dave was dying, and it just we were not there, and he was just he was slightly kind of just not dealt with probably right. But in any case, when Dave died, it was really just the 3 of us, me, Gonzo, and Joey, and we unless we were going to do some cool bass, drums, vocal thing, it wasn't going to fly, of course. So we needed guitar players. And then at that point, and we had a pretty serious powwow, the 3 of us, and said, okay, we're going to do this. We have these songs, but if we're going to do this, how are we going to do it? What are we going to do? We need some great guitar players. And Armored Saint has always been this family kind of thing. That's really the primary aspect of this group, is this tight-knit bond that we have. So we said, let's, of course, Gonzo wanted Phil to get another shot and be back in the band, and it was understandable, as his brother, of course. And Phil was ready at that point, and we always led Jeff too. So we're like, well, let's get Jeff. Let's see if we can bring those 2 guys back. They both played with Dave at different times, which was really kind of cool. And lo and behold, we got in and played together and played some songs, and it felt right. And it was like, okay, this is it. And that's when we carried on. And it's cool because Jeff and Phil have kind of created their own little bond for years now as the 2 guitar players. They would room together, and their styles are real different, but unique, both of them. And, and they've carried the torch and done it extremely well. And, and then still feels like the family. And that, that is really, look, I'm not saying it's all, roses, because it's not. We're a band, and, we have disputes and disagreements and stuff, and that's normal. But really, I think that's really the underbelly of what's important to Armored Saint, is these same guys. It really is the same guys. Even Jeff, who's sometimes viewed as like the new guy, has really been in this band since 1988. So, it's a long time. So I think that's really the key component to Saint, is that it's the same dudes. It's, it's not, Joey and a couple guys who are in some band and that were from Riverside and somebody from Dallas, and, and John Bush and his cousin. It's no, I'm not bagging on, some bands got to do what they got to do with personnel, and I get it, but it's not that. This is the same guys. And if Dave was alive, he would be here, and then we'd be like Skinner and, and have the 3 guitar players. That would be really amazing, but that's how I see it.
So let's talk about the success. You guys, you all came together, and the stars aligned, the moon was in, orbit around the sun, whatever, or the earth, whatever it does. I'm not an astrophysicist. And you released the success of Symbol of Salvation, which today still holds up. I love that album. I absolutely love it. So you're building on the success of that, and then all of a sudden, silence, hiatus, quiet. Explain what led to, I don't want to say to the demise, but it's like, hey, the machine had to stop for whatever reason or another. And then this other little band comes into play.
Interject with saying that what we been doing lately is we're finalizing all the footage that we did for the Symbol of Salvation tour that we did in its entirety a couple of years ago. And the DVD is going to come out in October, and the record, and it's a live thing, you know, the whole thing. And it sounds awesome, and it looks killer, and it's going to be really great. And people who love that record and feel close to it, they're going to love it even more now, because when you hear it in its entirety, it's really cool. And for those who didn't see us on tour doing that, they're going to really dig it. And for those who did, will also dig it. It's great. So that's another reason to love Symbol. But at the time, you know, I think what happened, this is at least my perspective on it. And
Okay, we'll put a disclaimer up there.
everybody has their different views, of course. And if you interview, you know, Jeff and Gonzo and Phil and Joey, they'd all give you a different take. But even before the Anthrax, you know, calls, I think that what happened was so much went into Symbol that there was just kind of this collective sigh. And at that point, it's funny because Metal Blade had connected with Warner Brothers, and the arrangement was with Warner Brothers that if a band sold a certain amount of records, that Warner Brothers was going to take them. And so you were trying to get to a certain number, and we didn't quite achieve that number. The Goo Goo Dolls did, and then they went on to, you know, to very serious success. Of course, different type of band, but, you know, people don't remember that Goo Goo Dolls were a Metal Blade, and they were like a punk band. And then they went on to be this pretty big pop band and a lot of success. But we didn't quite get there. And that was disappointing as time went on. We made the great record. We knew it. We were having some success at MTV with Headbangers Ball in particular, playing Rain of Fire, and then eventually Last Train Home. And it was cool, but we just didn't get to the point of selling. I think the number was like 100,000 units actually in America, and we didn't quite get there. And we did a tour, and it was, you know, for us, it was kind of an infamous tour with Wrathchild America and this band called Last Crack, which was actually a really cool band, kind of different, a little ahead of their time, a little almost proggy rock, alternative-ish, but they were cool. And but the tour it tanked. It really didn't do well, and there was a lot of kind of disputes in the band and dissension a little bit, and we were all in a van, and not only the band but the crew. I don't really know, I always laugh at, like, how did we even travel like that, because we had like 10 people in this van, and you know, we were driving like over the Rockies with a trailer in this van, and it just was hell. It really was. It was hell. And then we would go to the next show and have this kind of mediocre gig. And at the time, some of the crew was having this mutiny on our tour manager, who was brand new and really like treating him kind of poorly. And it led to a lot of just angst and frustration. So I think when that tour ended, it was like awful. Like that was just like a bad kind of memory, actually. And luckily, we were able to exercise those kind of memories with what we just recently did with the Symbol of Salvation in its entirety tour, because that was great. And it was kind of funny. But, you know, and then lo and behold, not too long after that, you know, give or take a few months, that's when Anthrax came calling. And so, look, you know, it was hard to leave the band at that point, because there's kinship, and it was never some easy decision to leave Saint, quite frankly. But you know, the fact is that it did happen, and I think it was the right decision for my life. So I don't regret that.
How do you break it to them? It's like, guys, sorry, but I'm being called in this direction, you know, because it's got to be tough.
You know, as a matter of fact, I even originally said no to Anthrax originally, and then they you know, they kind of came back and said, do you want to reconsider this? Like, we just signed this big deal to Elektra Records, and you know, basically, are you stupid? Really, I mean, that's what they should have just said. It's funny. And then, you know, I talked to a couple other friends, you know, I don't remember, and they're like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, what am I doing? But I think it was important that, me and Joey always joke that, there's this like undying loyalty to Armored Saint that like he had and I had, and, it's like sick. It's almost like, demented, but it's there, and that's why it was hard. But, the thing is that, I think it was important for me to come into Anthrax and say, I want to be part of what you're doing. I don't want to just be told like, here's the lyrics, here's the melody of the song, sing it. I wanted to be part of the writing process because I was always the lyricist and saying, and I was always, I was a key part of the writing. So I wanted that to be the case in Anthrax too. Not that I was like making my demands, but I just said, hey, utilize me if I'm going to do it. Let's see if we can do it with me, and let's see if we can write and have this connection. And so I went to New York, and we went into a rehearsal mode to see if we really could gel. Because I did like a practice with them where I sang old songs, and I sang like, I remember I sang "In My World" because I always really liked that song, and a couple others. And of course, my voice was always going to be different from Joey's. Joey Belladonna, that is. He has a great voice and super unique. But I was it sounded different. I was deeper and raspier, and his is cleaner and a little higher. So it was going to sound different, but it was going to sound like me. But I wanted to, sing those songs as they were meant to be heard, the original style, and the melodies and what have you. So we did this one rehearsal out here, and it sounded cool. And it's like, okay, that could work. I think everyone kind of agreed. But the next step was, what about the writing? And then I went to New York, and they had the music for Only, and I think Scott had this chorus idea, and then so we just started writing that song, and like I always say, we wrote that song like it seemed like in an hour or something, and then we played it, and it was like, wow, that's cool and sounds different, and like again, this is '92, and things were changing. The music scene was changing, and metal was changing, and there was all these new cool bands like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, and this just things were morphing, and then we wrote Only, and just the drums and the riff, and it sounded like this modern version of this band that was from the '80s, and it just felt right, and that was it.
So let's fast forward a little bit, because I just in the interest of time, we don't want to keep you all day, although we'd love to. So you had the successful career with Anthrax, and we came and saw you. That you came into the studio that one day, and we debuted the track so many years ago, which was cool. One of the coolest things that we've been able to do. So now, how does it all come back? Is it because they were in talks with Joey to bring him back in? And it's like, all right, guys, let's look back at Saint. So how do you flip it and start telling everybody, I think we should be doing this again?
The first kind of step back to Saint was it was around 98, around 99. We had just finished the record Volume 8, and we did a tour for it. And then at that point, Scott and Charlie were going to do an SOD record, a follow-up to the first SOD album that they did years before that. And so we were going to have a little hiatus because they were going to do it, and they were going to do some touring on it. And so I was like, well, okay, what am I going to do? And so like I talked to Joey Vera, and he's like, I have these couple ideas. You want to hear them? And, we could, just try to write some songs. And I said, okay. And then he gave them to me, and they were like really cool and sounded like Saint. And it sounds like that eventually became the record Revelation, which, we have After Me, The Flood, and Pay Dirt, and really cool, like sounding classic Armored Saint songs, but sounding again like it was taking kind of a step from 1984 to 2000. It really sounded a little bit more modern, but not modern as in a different band, but just we were evolving, and we were writing songs that still had the cool riffs, but was just growing, even though we had this kind of lapse of time. So once we started writing some of those songs, and then we kind of brought in a couple old ones that we had, songs that were just kind of there, but maybe not completely finished or what have you. And then we did that and combined those songs, and then we had enough for a record. So then we decided to make Revelation. So and then we did some touring on it, and then that was fun. But it was always with the intention that I was coming back to Anthrax, because Anthrax wasn't over by any means, and I wasn't out of the band at that point. We just were taking a kind of a hiatus. So then eventually I went back into Anthrax, and then we made the album We've Come For You All, which is the last record I made, which is also a great record, and I think, and you know, kind of just picked up and continued. You know? And then eventually what happened was we did touring for that record, and had some fun shows and what have you. But then the talk about doing a reunion came back up again. And I think that they were exploring that more seriously. And I was like, yeah, then you should do it. You know, if that's what you want to do, you know, not even in a negative way per se. I mean, look, I wasn't like, hey, I might be out of a job, you know, go do it. You know, it wasn't that happy, but, you know, at the same time, you know, I could just feel it. And it was weird because it was a gravitational pull. Like, I had just gotten married, and then my first daughter was, my only daughter was born, and I was kind of in dad mode, and had a couple other things brewing that were outside of the music business. And it just felt like like I said, it was just a gravitational pull of me being pulled out and them doing that. And, you know, again, it was a scary time because it's like free falling. It's like, you know, it's like jumping out. Well, I've never jumped out of an airplane actually. But I would assume it would be kind of like that, of like, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm going with it. And I've done things like that in my life a few times. And I think it's kind of exhilarating to do that, albeit dangerous, you know, like relocating to a new town or whatever. You know, you have to take those chances in life. You have to just kind of know that somehow you'll be all right. And that's, I think, how we felt. And my wife and I, we had just got married. And she was having kind of changes in her career that were almost parallel. And so we were like, we may not be making any money here in the next week or two, but like, we'll get through it. And that's what we did. And so, and, you know, I did eventually get through it.
Yeah, so then you're back in the band. You continue to release a few albums, making videos. One with a guy watching porn.
We did La Raza first. That came out in 2010.
Yeah.
So then we made a really cool video for Left Hook from Right Field with the boxing guy and some religious kind of overtones, a little bit poking fun of that because that's kind of the theme of that song. And then, you know, we did some touring for La Raza, but nothing like substantial, but it was setting up. And then the next record, When Hands Down, which came out in 2015, that record was really a big step, I think, for us. And it was a great Saint record. It just felt like a kind of return to what we always did. And
just to remind people of what you do live, you put out a live album in 2017.
And then we did a lot of touring, more than we had in a long time for When Hands Down. And we were excited. We played some dates with Metal Church, and we did some dates with Queensryche and Saxon. And, you know, we did some really great shows internationally, and finally went to Japan for the first time, and finally got to South America. And these are places Armored Saint never played. And it was really exciting. So, you know, we really felt like we established a lot with that. And then we made a couple videos, one with the, you know, When Hands Down, the title track, and then the song that you're referring to, you know, the song Exercise and Debauchery, which is about, you know, a guy's sexual habits.
Yeah, and notice it's the single guy that brings up the video with porn in it, right?
I mean, there was different girls in that video, and one of them was my neighbor down the street. She's an actress. Her name is Sharon, and she's the older woman who's in the jail cell, and she did an incredible job on that. We were always so stoked for her, and she's an actress and does a lot of stuff. And you know, she came in, and she was the crazy, you know, kind of S&M prison lady, and did a really great job. And I love that video. Like, it doesn't get enough credit, but it's a really
apparently somebody else does too.
you know, of the two. You know, if you have some sexual habits that are just a little bit obsessive, but yeah, it was fun to write that song and do that video. And, you know, like I said, it was weird. That song, it just didn't completely connect, but I mean, obviously people like it and I like it, great riffs in it, but you know, I think the video is really cool to it. And When Hands Down overall was just a real, you know, really kind of reestablished Armored Saint as this, you know, band that was, you know, back and great, you know, and writing cool music. So, and I love La Raza too, but I always say without La Raza, we wouldn't be able to get to When Hands Down. And I always think the previous record is the one that kind of sets up the next one. And then When Hands Down really set up Punching the Sky, which is the last one we just put out last year. And I think that's another amazing album that we made. So like we're in a good groove here. So
I remember when
COVID jacked it up. Never jacked it all up, but they did for everybody.
Yeah.
I remember when La Raza came out and you guys did that show at the Viper Room, which was packed like sardines. That was a fun show.
That was a great show, yeah.
Yeah, I squeezed in there with, I thought it was him that I went, but I was mistaken. It was a couple other friends of mine. And I remember you looked at me really quick on stage and you go, give me a nod, and then you took off. I'm like, okay, that's about all we're going to get today. It was kind of funny. But it was a great show. And I remember hearing the tunes because we were playing it on KNAC.com at the time. And it was like, okay, they're going in a different direction, but I like it. You know, you can't be putting out the same album year after year after year. And then I think I agree with you that it did set things up for the future. And speaking of the future, here we are now in late 2019, 2020, 2021. And we've got this great album to discuss here really briefly here, Punching the Sky, which again, I've listened to a zillion times. How did this album come to be? When did the writing on this start? And did COVID throw a mix into everything? It's like, no, we're still going to be doing this, but we're going to be doing Zoom meetings and getting Zoom burnout. How did this come to be?
Writing here and there, because we did a lot of touring, but it wasn't like nonstop, you know, 2 years straight. It was like we'd go out for a month here and then we'd come back, and then we'd go out for 2 weeks there and come back. And then in that time, we were probably trying to write some songs. And then we kind of really hunkered down in 19 probably and started really writing, or maybe even before that. Sometimes I get the timelines wrong, but yeah, I think we were just kind of, let's just continue on in the style of what we were doing, but always push ourselves. You know, I think that's the key, is to really not repeat what you did. I mean, that's to me is the big move for a band or for an artist, to not, you know, to say, okay, what do the fans expect? Let's give them exactly that. Like, I'm always into the curveball. I'm always into, you know, throwing a wrench in things, mainly because I think it's challenging, not only for yourself as a musician and a writer, but for the fans. I'm not, you know, I always make the joke that we're not going to make the Armored Saint, you know, trip hop bluegrass album and then go, here it is, man, this is it. Like, you got to love it because it's Saint, it says Armored Saint on it, you know, and it sounds like that, and try to convince the fan base that it was the right record. We're not going to do it. It's always going to be this hard rock, heavy metal, bluesy type of band, record of songs. But it's also, you can do different things, and you can incorporate different instruments, and you could incorporate different time changes and sounds and styles, and you know, all those things. I think we feel like we can pull it off, and you know, really, I mean, we really feel like there's nothing we can't do. I mean, and if there was something that was just too foreign, then I think we'd say, okay, maybe that's not right for this. Save it for your solo album. But you know, really, as long as you, I think, incorporate it with some style of what the origins of it are, then if you bring in like a flute, or you bring in, Uilleann pipes or things like that, then it works. You know, it works with the songs, and that's what we've done. And Joey's been incredible at pushing that envelope. And you know, he's the chief writer, and everybody contributes, but he's just the leader. It's just the way it is, and you need a leader, of course. And you know, I think it's made us this band that people now look at and go, wow, like they're pretty for real in terms of not, you know, of writing really cool, crafted, hard rock, heavy metal songs that sound like what they always were, but still are evolving. And I think that's the important part. You got to evolve, you got to push yourself, and that's what we do. So the songs is kind of, at that point, once you get on a roll, I always kind of say they start writing themselves. And that's what happened. And we're really proud of that record. And luckily COVID, when the shutdowns happened, we were done. We were done with the writing and the recording. We just had to mix it. And we gave it to Jay Rustin, who mixed the record. And, he did it on his own anyway, and would send us stuff. And I'm sure he wouldn't want to even have us in the studio with him because we would just be a nuisance. So he would send us stuff, and he's so good that it was like, it sounds amazing. What do you mean? Well, I don't have much to say here. Of course, we made some changes here and there, but in the end, it was already sounding amazing. So we were, obviously COVID affected touring for everybody. It's so weird. It's so weird to think that nobody could play live shows. Nobody. It was wild. It's probably a unanimous feeling that any musician had, that they could really relate to their fellow musician. Go, we can't perform. And then the live stream thing came out, and we did do one, and it was cool. It was fun. I don't need to do another one, quite frankly. It was like doing kind of don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for the people that watched it, and I did have fun making it. It was cool, especially to be able to play some new tunes, because we didn't play. We hadn't played any new songs. We wanted to play some new songs live, and we learned several to play, and we're excited about that. But it was like, to me, it was like a cross between a rehearsal and a video, making a video, because there was fans there. My wife says to this day it's the best show she ever went to for us, because there was nobody there. So she just was in her own. It was like her and Tracy, Joey's wife, and that was it, and the crew, and they got to just run around the venue and have fun, and not to worry about being sweated on from other people. And so for her it was the best gig ever. But it was fun doing it. I don't need to do another live stream. The next show I want to play is in front of people. So.
Do you guys know how many streams you end up getting out there? Did that number ever come out? Is it public? How many streams? How many people logged in to see it?
How many actually watched it? I would say probably, I think it was close to 1,000, believe it or not, because you still had to pay to do it. Yeah. And because it was like, it was a gig, and we had to pay for the expenses to it, and we wanted to make us some money to do it, of course, as well. So, we played the Whiskey, and it was like a local gig, but, in LA, we get paid pretty well to play in LA, but, we're like, we're playing, there's nobody there. And we got to make some money here, and we got to pay for the expenses, like I said. So it was fine. It was lucrative enough, and enough people saw it and watched it. I think that it made it exciting. And like I said, it was fun, but it's not really what I envision doing more of. Like, we got an offer to do another one, and it was conjunction with this pretty big magazine, and we didn't really want to tell them no, because they were really supportive of us, but we didn't want to do it. And we're like, we just did one, and we just don't really want to do another live stream right now, and so we passed, and hopefully they weren't offended. But we're going to do some shows, at least for now. We have some shows confirmed in December. I can't say anything yet about who's with yet, because it's not official, but it is with another artist. We're going to be the support act, and the artist is cool, and people are going to be really excited. It's not that many shows for now. It's like a handful, but it's something to look forward to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of bands are starting to schedule tour dates for the fall. And so I was going to ask, what's the future schedule for Armor Saint? Will there be more videos for Punching the Sky? Obviously, you just touched on the tour dates. But what's the kind of the future going forward now?
And any more COVID videos like Isolation?
That was pretty cool too. I enjoyed doing that as well. That was fun and kind of different and appropriate, of course. We are finishing up a video for the song Lone Wolf, which is really cool, because this will be our 4th video. Technically our 5th if you add, the song Never You Fret, which is kind of like a little, like almost like a homemade video. But this video is going to be really cool and very different, and because the song is kind of different. I think all the videos we made for for this album have been really very creative, and they look amazing. But same director, Robert Westis is his name. He did End of the Attention Span, and he did Missile to Gun, and he's doing this one, and this one's going to be a little different. It's going to have a little bit more of a dialogue in it, but it's going to be fun, and it's a great tune. And I mean, we're going to make 4 official videos on this record. It's like we're some really big band from the 80s. I don't know what we're thinking here, but it's really cool to do that. And we by making these videos, it's kept us in the public's eye for this record, which is really cool because we haven't been able to play live, of course.
And by the way, you look really sexy in a bike helmet.
Bike helmet, just so you know.
Yeah.
Pardon?
You look really sexy in a bike helmet.
Joey had this idea of doing, me riding my bike and singing that song. And I was like, all right, again, I'll try anything. So it's pretty funny because I was on Wilshire Boulevard, it was during COVID. So the traffic wasn't.
There was nobody out there.
There was nobody out there. Maybe some random homeless people looking at me. And,
Were you actually singing out loud, though, is the question?
I wanted to sing, for real. And so I had the headphones on with the song. And so I was singing to it. So they'd have to something that they could edit to, of course. And it was like biking and, it was work, and I did it a bunch of times and I was all sweaty. And it was really fun to do that, actually, with my Evel Knievel helmet. So, and I didn't crash, and that was important. Because he's like, dude.
Yeah, that's important.
I was going to say the insurance.
That's pretty important, not to crash.
Anyways, the cool thing again about Punching the Sky is we made all these videos, and it still feels fresh because we really haven't played. I haven't sang these songs live. I haven't rehearsed them a lot because I intentionally don't want to burn out on them. So I think when we get back in the rehearsal studio, and we get ready to perform live, they're going to feel super fresh because we haven't played them, So as much as it won't be, it's already been out now like 6 to 8 months now, but the reality is it still will feel like a new record. So that'll be fun.
So the last thing we have to ask about, because there's been a lot of buzz on the internet about this, and our friend Bob Nalbandian brought this up when we talked to him earlier in the year, the Band of Brothers documentary. Is there any update on a release date on that?
Release date yet, but he's getting closer to Russell, that is, who's the director and the guy who put the film together. He's getting closer to being able to release it. So we're talking about writing a song for the final credits, which is something we were looking to do, and so that'd be another new song. And the documentary will be cool. He got a lot of interviews with some important people in the history of Armored Saint, Cliff Bernstein and Ron Fair and Brian Slagle, and obviously some friends, people like Bob and Zach Harmon, who was one of our early techs, who's been with Metallica for years, and James and Laura. So it's going to be fun. Max Norman, there's really a lot of interviews there from a lot of key people that were part of our history, and also, are already very famous in the music business in their own right. So, and hopefully it's going to be, candid. It won't be, skirting around important topics. I think there's going to be some funny banter in there, and some things that will, maybe even feel a little uncomfortable, hopefully, but you want it to feel genuine.
Did he come to you guys for creative, or he just said, I'm making this and we'd love your involvement? If not, just sit back and ride the wave?
It is us, and it's our band, and it's our thing in the sense that it's about us. So we want to have something to say about it. He ran with it, and we kind of let him run with it. And he's great. I'm talking about Russell, the director, and he had a lot of ideas, and he had his own ambitions and things he wanted to talk about. So we didn't have to really interject too much with it, but we just want to look good. That's the key thing. And it's our documentary, and in the sense that it's about Armored Saint, but it's really more his thing, really, which is cool.
Well,
I think we've covered as much as we can cover.
Because it's Metal Digest, not Metal Wikipedia.
We've been talking for about a little over an hour, maybe. So I think we've talked about a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we appreciate your time in providing all this insights that maybe some people that even are fans of the band maybe didn't know about.
Yep.
You know, because anytime we can help bring new knowledge about a band to the public, we're all about that, and supporting the metal community and doing what we can to do that, whether it's live shows, being able to get people like you on our show and do interviews. And so we're just happy to be here and happy that you were able to join us and take time out of your early morning.
You are officially our first guest on the new rebranding, so
Yes.
we're honored to.
Appreciate that we had this kind of breakdown in communication there for some years now. But you know, I always say that those things kind of happen, and then, you know, you kind of get reacquainted, and then it's like,
Yeah.
it's like we never stopped talking.
Right.
Well,
right.
I know a way we can
Rectify.
mend old times,
Mend those
have
wounds.
our traditional.
Okay, so we're supposed to, you know,
Twisting your arm.
I don't normally drink Crown Royal at 10 a.m.
Right. I bet.
I beg to differ, because when we did crossovers, you always did it at 10:03. So
Oh, God. Okay, well, Tori,
Sorry.
I'm calling my wife so she can join me, so we'll be on the same page. And then I'll, I don't know, she's on the phone, so anyways, but here, we'll do this.
All right.
Cheers.
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 we appreciate you. Here we go. Once
Yeah, yeah.
And down the hatch here. There you go. By the way, it's noon here, so we're good and
Yeah, right.
smooth.
Yep, good.
So the album is Punching the Sky, and this is copy, by the way, number 287 of 300. I feel honored. This is the lavender, and yeah, I ordered it as soon as it went up online. We encourage everybody to buy the physical product, and yeah, I mentioned earlier that I was listening to everything online. I had to get this, absolutely. And when the package comes out for the Symbol of Salvation 30th anniversary, I'll pre-order that as well.
We were just, kind of approving some of it, and it's going to be great. It looks great. And like I said, it sounds great. It's going to be a real fun thing. And another Saint product coming out now in 21. So, because it will come out in October. So, we're keeping it going. And like I said, hopefully we'll get on the road, and realistically, most of it would be next year, the way things are looking, although you never know. But we are doing some dates in December, and, we love coming to Texas and, everywhere in America, of course. And there's still a lot of places that Armored Saint have yet to play. We've never really done a proper tour of Scandinavia. We've never done like the midsection of Canada. There's places like in France and Spain that we've never played. And we've never played Lisbon, Portugal. And so, we never played in Russia. There's a lot of places that we still want to get to, as well as all the places that we love to play that we've played for years. So, it's going to be a fun year next year for sure with us. And, we'll do some great gigs, and hopefully some great.
Well, we're available to, to travel to do the documentary, online or, on the road with you if need be.
Yeah.
So, John, it's been great catching up. We'll definitely exchange contact information, get everything updated. We can't thank you enough for joining us here on the AJ and RJ Show podcast, episode 2. Right?
Yep.
So, with that said, I'm RJ Stone.
I'm AJ Motz.
This is Sweet Death Entertainment, and that's John Bush,
Yes.
Armored Saint.
Yep.
Get on the road. Go see him. Then you go see him. Go out there.
All right. Peace, guys.
Peace to you, bud. We'll see you soon.